quality of life issues, to short-term rentals, to infrastructure, to traffic. Those are some of the issues that North Charleston City Councilman Kenneth Skipper is tackling. I talked one-on-one with the councilman for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Kenneth Skipper.
Hello, sir.
Welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
It's been a little while here.
Yes,
I think we had COVID in between, and so it's been a couple years. So it's always good to see you, though.
Likewise. I know it's been a couple of years. Of course, you're North Charleston City Councilman for District
9, which is the majority of my districts in Dorchester County. Kind of a reference point, Ash Phosphate and Dorchester Road, going up towards Somerville. So, believe it or not, there's almost 30,000 residents of the city of North Charleston that are actually Dorchester County residents. A lot of people don't realize that.
So Councilman, and I'm always in that area for work, going to the Publix actually.
Yeah, I understand.
But how many people have actually moved into that part of your district since you came on council?
Since 2010, my district has grown by almost 6,000 people. So it's been a huge increase in that particular area of the city. Both District 4 and District 9 have grown more than any other districts in the city.
So Councilman, let me ask you, how could you grow that district with smart growth?
The city had good foresight with the development of Westcott and how that was done. But just like anywhere in our area, the infrastructure doesn't keep up with the growth. Obviously Dorchester Road needs to be widened to 3 lanes in each direction. You've got a choke point there at Ash Phosphate still. So there's still a lot of things from an infrastructure standpoint that we could do to help improve, the traffic that everybody sits in every morning. So.
Ooh. And Councilman, talk to me about how you all would help with the state as far as widening Dorchester Road. How much money would you all put aside for that?
Well, I mean, it is obviously a state road, but both Charleston County and Dorchester County have plans to ultimately widen Dorchester Road. So it's going to be a joint project between the counties and the state. And then obviously if the city, could help contribute, we would do that as well. But it's definitely a very important part of, continued growth for sure.
So where's that continued growth in your district?
In my district, it continues to be on the Dorchester Road corridor, and then obviously across the Ashley River. That portion of the city is in my district, and over the next 10, 15 years, that's really where you can see the growth.
So what do you expect with that growth?
Well, I mean, obviously we're already building a fire station across the Ashley. So you're going to need to have some police substations. Just the services that the residents are going to require as that continues to grow. So.
And where are the services needed right now in that district?
Right now, we've got good coverage as far as fire and police. But like I say, as it grows and crosses the river, we're going to need to step up our game a little bit. So.
Where do you need to step it up right now?
Right now, I think we're in pretty good shape. We really do, provide the services that are needed in the district. We have Westcott Park that's right there, which, from a recreation standpoint is a big deal. There's plans to build a community center up there. Dorchester County is putting in a new library. We've got the aquatic center. And then we just purchased some property right there, close to the aquatic center that we'll put some additional soccer fields in and stuff. So we're, really looking at the quality of life for the residents and putting in, different things to assist with that. So.
And what could assist with that right now, Councilman?
I'm sorry, say that again now?
Yeah, what could assist with that right now?
Well, it's really just, funding and time, and just getting those programs in place. So,
what ideal funding would you get right now if you could?
Obviously there's, you're always looking for additional funding. And what people don't realize is there's so many different, buckets of money that you can't use for everything. You've got to use it for certain things. The key to the future development is really, private, public partnership as the, different buildings develop, different businesses come to the area, and really, leveraging that power to increase your funds. So
So, how many businesses that is have been developed in your district so far?
Just from a retail standpoint, you've got a brand new retail development and right in front of Cedar Grove, which has Lidl. There's Firehouse Subs. There is a couple other restaurants that are getting ready to open up there. So it's continues to grow. So
now, let me ask you this: what ideal public-private partnership would help that growth?
Well, obviously, as you're building, additional neighborhoods and housing and that kind of stuff, is really coming up with a program between the two to set aside monies for livability, housing, from low level housing all the way up to the very top, but really working out those details with the development.
And I want to talk to you about housing in just a minute. My tongue is twice twisted today. But let me ask you, you go back to, obviously, the Aquatic Center. Some of the accomplishments the city made in 2020 was the opening of the North Charleston Aquatic Center, which is a partnership, of course, with Dorchester District 2.
That's correct.
How much money has the city generated for the city and DD2 so far?
I don't really have those figures. Obviously, it's more about a quality of life and a service that's added. So it's not necessarily about the return on that investment. It's really for the community and for the people.
Yes, sir.
Obviously North Charleston, runs the facility, but the amount of use that it gets I think, has surprised everybody. Much more than what was even projected before it was built. So between swim meets and open swim and swimming lessons and everything else that goes along with that, it's a well-used facility.
You talk about projections. So what are the future projections for the center?
As far as
DD2 and,
we're always looking to partner with whether it be Dorchester County, Charleston County, either one of the school districts. We're just looking to make smart decisions to utilize the public's money.
Yes,
and that's a perfect example of the school district working with the city and combining our funds to make really a first-class facility. It's probably the nicest one in the state by far. So.
And you talk about combined funds. How much money did the North Charleston put aside for that?
We put about $15 million in. The school district put in about $7.5 million. So you've got a $23 million facility there roughly. But $7.5 million wouldn't have done it by itself. Neither would $15 million. So with the combined effort, you got a much nicer facility than what you would have had if either one did it on their own. So.
Now, Councilman, let me ask you, how many people actually visit that particular center, aquatic center, every day?
Oh, I don't know the numbers every day, but it's definitely well used. There's a lot of people that have different kind of classes in there, different things going on, different swim team practices in there. So it's used pretty much anytime it's open. There are people in there utilizing it. So.
Wow. And I want to talk to you more about that and livability in just a second. But as you know, Mayor Keith Summey delivered his State of the City address a week ago. And I know that you were the Mayor Pro-Tem.
I was, yes. and I really appreciate my peers, allowing me to be the Mayor Pro-Tem. I look forward to it. Just look forward to meeting more people in the city. So.
Let me reset, Councilman. The state of North Charleston is?
The state of North Charleston, I would say, is probably better today than it's ever been. If you look at, the amount of businesses that have come into North Charleston, the amount of community centers, the activities, we're definitely moving in the right direction. It really is a great place to live, work, and play. We've got a lot of things, going on. Redoing Park Circle, redoing Danny Jones.
Yes.
Those are going to be, just fantastic facilities, once they're completed.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Councilman. Then what are the city's administrative burdens due to resilience, tenacity, and perseverance?
Obviously, as the city has grown, it's a multi-million-dollar operation, every day. Between the number of employees that we have, You know, the number of policemen, the number of firemen, the number of, you know, folks that work in recreation or code enforcement. I mean, it's a big business. It's a big business. It's come a long way in 50 years.
50 years.
All right.
So, with all of that going on right now, what are your current budget restraints?
You know, from a financial standpoint, you know, the city's in good shape. You know, fortunately, over the last 50 years, we've been able to utilize that growth to, you know, prevent tax increases. You know, so we've used our growth and the money that's generated to, you know, to keep taxes, you know, level for the individuals. If you look at the developments going on around, you know, Tanger Mall or Tanger Outlet, you know, the Top Golf, you know, there's some apartments going in. There's a couple more hotels going in. There's going to be some more restaurants, you know, so that's really becoming a hub for our city and really for the whole area. You know, the Top Golf alone, and I think it's been packed every night since it's opened.
Good. Yeah, I walked over there a couple of times right before they opened, so it's an amazing space over there.
Absolutely.
And I love Tropical Smoothie, which is coming over there.
Yes, it's coming over there as well. That's right. So,
tell me, how much money has the city garnered, or, you know, obviously received because of that growth?
I mean, you know, it's all part of a, you know, some tax incremental financing, you know, that some tips that they put in years ago. You know, so it's generated, you know, millions of dollars really, and we continue to see the returns on that.
So what is the current tax base for the city right now?
As far as the mills that we're paying, or I mean, it's been consistent over the last, you know, 15 years or more. I think even longer than that. You know, since I've been on council, there hasn't been any tax increase whatsoever. So
what, you know, obviously what you mentioned earlier as far as my question in regards to public budget strength, that is, how is the city's budget prepared?
You know, it starts with the individual department heads for each of the departments. You know, whether it be police, fire, recreation, but you know, those department heads put their budget together. That's rolled all together and goes to the administrative department, which is the mayor and his team, and then the mayor, you know, finalizes the budget. He presents it to council. We have a workshop in April, which is open to anybody that would want to come. But we review the entire budget. We look at the, you know, potential revenues that we're going to have coming in, you know, through both, you know, property taxes, business licenses, as well as our A-tax money that comes in from, you know, whether it be restaurants, businesses, whatever. So all of that, you know, rolls in, and the accounting group does a great job of projecting, you know, what they really expect for revenues, you know, for the upcoming year. And then that budget is discussed with council and the mayor's office, and you know, we come up with a final budget. So,
and I know April's 2 months from now, but what are those potential revenues that you all foresee coming to the city?
Well, I mean, it's, you know, I mean, we have, you know, consistent revenue streams from, you know, business licenses is a big one. You know, obviously the taxes, and then, you know, A-tax money as well. And over the last, really, with the exception of COVID, other than, you know, probably 2020, the revenue's been pretty consistent. So
now, how do you all determine priorities for where the money goes for what, and to what communities?
Well, I mean, it really comes down to funding the departments first. To ensure that we have the services that the citizens need. You know, obviously our biggest spend is both, you know, between fire and police. You know, but you know, even sanitation. You know, those are the services that you've got to provide first. So you've got to make sure that's covered before you can, you know, add any of the, you know, nice to have stuff. So,
what are those nice to have things that you all have now?
Well, I mean, that would be the community centers and different things that we've built. You know, we built a community center in Northwoods. We've got one on Dorchester Road. You know, they're looking to build one on the south end of the city at the old tank farm. And then they're looking to build a fourth one, you know, up in the Dorchester County corridor. So, you know, those would be the nice to have things. And fortunately, you know, through our growth and the different businesses that we've had, we've been able to fund those type things, you know, without impacting the taxpayer.
Now, how soon will we see federal, state, and local infrastructure projects beginning in North Charleston?
I mean, you know, you've got several that are planned. You know, obviously the 526 expansion will directly impact some of our residents. You know, the state is working through that now with the community. They've had a lot of different meetings. And then you're going to, you know, see the Low Country Rapid transit system, you know, with the bus system that's going to run basically all the way down Rivers Avenue, you know, to downtown. And that's going to really allow for a redevelopment really down the Rivers Avenue corridor.
But then, Councilman, why have a rail system when 526 East is being redeveloped?
Well, it's going to be a bus system. It's a bus, you know, rapid transit to try to, you know, even with the increased amount on 526, you know, you'll be able to have, you know, obviously try to catch up with the amount of cars that we have. But, you know, in order to really move people, eventually we're going to have to utilize, you know, mass transit, which the Low Country Rapid Transit would allow us to do.
Now, how many cars actually go over 526 every day?
Oh my goodness. You know, I don't know that exact number, but I can tell you it's a lot, you know, and that infrastructure hasn't kept up with the number of cars that we have on a daily basis.
So how do you catch up with that right now?
Well, I mean, it's a process. You know, it's probably going to take, you know, years. You know, it's not something we can just, you know, flip the switch on. You know, and it's really, you know, almost dependent as much on, you know, the ability to build it as opposed to the funding. You know, it's a two types of approaches. You know, you got the funding, then you got the actual, you know, getting it permitted, getting the property, you know, and getting it built. You know, which is a whole different issue as opposed to just the funding. So it'll take years.
Now, how much funding will North Charleston put aside for the rapid transit system?
We won't have to put any direct money in from the city. Okay. You know, that's a you know, regional issue, or regional, you know, monies that are coming in from the counties and from the state, and some grants from the federal government as well.
Wow.
So,
and how much grants will be coming in from that?
I don't know the numbers, but that's where the funding's coming from, and they've already gotten approval. Okay. You know, for the first part of it. So
yes, sir. Now, going back to the federal and state local infrastructure, that is, will the city's older communities be a part of that process?
Well, I mean, we're always looking to improve, you know, infrastructure throughout the city. You know, a lot of the older communities, the roads are actually state roads. So we, you know, have to work with the state to try to get, you know, those roads improved. You know, whether you're talking, you know, anything from speed humps to sidewalks to any of that, you know, all of that. You know, even repaving, you know, that's really comes from the state. So we can't override them as the city and say, hey, this is what we want to do. But we do work with them to, you know, to try to improve, you know, all of the areas of the community. So
what communities are priority right now?
I mean, you know, there's not a specific community. You know, obviously the southern end of the city. You know, it's older than say my district. You know, so there's a focus there to you know, try to continue to improve, you know, everything that we have there. You know, as far as you know, whether it be community centers, you know, recreational centers, you know, to really, you know, add to the quality of life for everybody in the community. So,
but then, by adding a grocery store, how would that improve the quality of life there?
Obviously, you know, that is a food desert. You know, and we have been battling as a city for years to try to entice, you know, a grocery store to come down into that area. You know, we've even offered, you know, some help with funding to put a grocery store in that area. And we continue to look at it, but you know, so far we haven't found that magic bullet to get that taken care of. But you know, it's obviously an issue that everybody on council is aware of.
Now, I know obviously the Teddy E. Pryor Social Services building is right there,
right?
Rivers and obviously McMillan. But let me ask you, what's the next ideal logical location for a potential grocery store?
Well, I mean, obviously, right there in that area that you're discussing would be, you know, perfect location for it. You know, I think that the Low Country Rapid Transit, as that develops and as that comes, you know, basically right through that particular area, you know, you'll see continued growth from a population standpoint. And obviously the more people that you have, the more it would entice a grocery store, to move into that area. Obviously, if you own the grocery store, you're looking to, to make money, and the more people that you've got there, and the more customers you have, the more, potential you have to make money. So.
Now, with that rapid transit system, Councilman, how will this affect the existing residents in that area?
I think it's going to be a positive for those residents. It's going to allow them, to move, up and down that corridor, really from Somerville all the way to downtown. And I think what you'll see over time is, different restaurants and businesses and things that are going to develop along that line, to include, additional housing, whether it be apartments or townhomes or condos, and the, the city has a good plan as far as zoning and how they're looking at that whole area. So.
But then, how should the city update its zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations to reflect the future land use map?
I mean, we just redid our land use map, a year and a half, 2 years ago. So it's been updated, and we really made changes along that Rivers Avenue corridor, as far as what can go in there, what types of businesses. It's not, we've limited the industrial uses, which will make it more friendly for individuals. Which was the plan with the comprehensive plan that was put into place. So
now, Councilman, I'm looking at the area because that's my running route. But let me ask you, how many houses or condos can actually get in that area right now? How much land is left?
A lot of the land's got to be recaptured and redeveloped. Because obviously, if you drive down Rivers Avenue, there's businesses up and down both sides, and what you're going to see is over time, those businesses being transformed into whether it be residential or mixed use type of use. But over the next 15 to 20 years, it's not an overnight transformation. But I think you'll see slowly that that transformation will occur.
Now, what portion of the infrastructure budget will go to new development versus communities well over 50 years, such as the South End?
Well, I mean, there's not necessarily a designated fund for infrastructure redevelopment. Like I say, the majority of our budget goes to services that the city provides. Those funds are going to have to come from private enterprises. To see our vision, see the future, and go and invest in those communities.
Now, what percentage of the budget, Councilman, will actually go to bridges and overpasses to eliminate that automobile traffic at the train crossings? And
I mean, from a city standpoint, I mean, our budget really doesn't address that. That's really more on the county and state level.
Okay.
We do have some monies that the city received from the State Port Authority to help with some overpasses.
Sure.
The intermodal transit facility that they're building at the Navy base. Is going to change the flow of freight in the area, from a trucking standpoint, from a vessel standpoint. So it's gonna change the way that the traffic flows.
Now, I know $2,309,475 of the federal money has been given to the city. Where's the accountability for that?
That's approved by council, but the mayor's office really kind of sets a proposal, and then it's approved, by council. We did, give the $1.3 million to, the gun violence programs. We're looking forward to seeing some positive results from that. But that was monies that we were able to utilize, really put back into the community to try to improve, some of the issues that we do have.
Now, in regards to the priorities for this federal money that came from the federal government to the mayor's office, did they communicate that with council?
They did.
Okay.
They did.
Okay.
And there were several different things that it was used for. So, to include some bonuses for the people that worked through COVID. But even with that money, there were strict rules as far as what the money could be used for.
Sure.
So I think the mayor's office did a good job of distributing that money and utilizing it, the best that we could. So.
Now, since COVID, I know this is such a long time ago, Councilman, but how many employees have actually returned to the city?
We put a hiring freeze on when COVID came. We reduced our spending, and the city was fortunate enough to make it through that without a tax increase, which can't be said for all the municipalities. But we did a good job with the freeze and everything, and now we reopened a lot of the positions, and we're filling them on a regular basis. So
how many of those positions are being filled currently?
I don't know the exact number of open positions, but I do know that we have continued to close that gap. Across all departments. Fire, police, recreation. You name it. We're adding people. So.
And speaking of adding and actually closing gaps, let me talk to you about short-term rentals. How many short-term rentals are there in the city right now?
There are a lot. There's a lot, especially around Park Circle area. That's a very popular area for short-term rentals. We just came out with a policy, an ordinance, where they have to apply for a license, and we're checking those. Rentals, checking, make sure they're following the rules.
Yes.
But that's a new phenomenon, throughout the country. So I'm sure that we'll continue to tweak our policy as time goes on. We'll figure out exactly what works, what doesn't work, and just continue to adjust it.
So what's working right now in your mind, Councilman?
Well, I think the first thing is just identifying all that we have out there, and making sure that they have the right license.
Yes.
And that we're actually checking on them. Yes. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they were still there, but we had no rules, no anything. So I think just from an identification standpoint, that's step one, and then we'll see how it progresses as time goes on.
So how many resident occupied homes are there in your district?
Oh goodness, there's about almost 11,000 homes or so.
Whew. And how many?
Well, let me take that back. There's about 5,000 homes or so with roughly 2 people in it. If you want to look at it that way.
Right.
So.
How many days are they actually allowed for these short-term rentals to be actually rented?
They can be rented, in different increments, whether it be 3 days, 2 days, a month. But all that's being monitored and controlled now through the city. Yes. Whereas before it wasn't. So.
Wow. And what mistakes from the past that they're trying to catch up with now and actually correct when it comes to that?
Well, the biggest thing is identification. And making sure that we're, we've limited the number of cars that can be parked there, the number of people that can stay in a house, and just making sure they're following those rules. Whereas before, you could have 25 people in one house. There was no rules. They could have 25 cars in the front yard, and that impacted, the residents that live there, year round.
Yes.
So we're trying to, correct that and make it fair to the people that are running those businesses, but also, taking into account the people that live there all the time and making sure that their life's not impacted by having this business across the street or next door or whatever. So.
And let me turn over to something that's also impacting a lot of your residents, and that is obviously drainages. How has the city developed and adopted and actually implemented a drainage master plan in coordination with those adjacent areas in your area, in your district?
Obviously, drainage, continues to change. We had the 100-year flood. We've had some different, natural things that have occurred that never happened in the past. So we've instituted a couple of different studies. In the Pepper Hill area, they had an issue with some flooding. Actually, the Coosaw Creek, they've had flooding there. So, we've done some studies and trying to implement the recommendations that we got back from them to help improve it. But that's a continuing, issue that we continue to look at.
The stormwater manual, in your mind, what would that look like in the next 5 years?
Well, like I say, we continue to look at it, to study it, to upgrade it, to where we don't have, areas that flood, every time it rains. So it's just a continuous process that we, look at on a regular basis.
Now, what is actually more important for the city of North Charleston? Building new homes and commercial space, or rehabbing, expanding, and better utilizing the existing homes?
I mean, I think it's both. I think it's an approach of smart growth, smart development, whether it be new development or the redevelopment of existing areas. But it's doing it in a manner that matches our comprehensive plan, that provides a partnership between the private sector and the public sector, to ultimately create an area, whether it be a redevelopment or a new area that is, has a high livability factor for the individual. So it's not a focus on one or the other. I think it's a focus on both at the same time.
So where is the city of North Charleston's livability study?
We don't really have a livability study. It's something that's been talked about by several of my colleagues on council.
Okay.
And it's something that we probably should look at to see, what the residents actually think versus, what the city may think, and see, what the gap is between the two. So,
what gaps are you seeing in your district, for instance?
The biggest issue that the folks in my district have is really the traffic. And as we continue to grow, without that infrastructure growing that we talked about earlier, it makes it hard. Every morning when I go to work, I have a choice. I can either fight Ashley Phosphate or I can fight Dorchester Road. So, my residents, my communities, my constituents, people in the district,
yes, sir.
I live it every day with them. So I see this morning was a good example. There's a wreck on the interstate, which, floods Rivers Avenue, Dorchester Road, Ashley Phosphate, and it affects everybody in the area. And that's probably the biggest quality of life issue that I have in my district. But I would bet that if you took a poll across all of North Charleston, that might not be the very first thing for everybody, but it's definitely in the top 2 or 3.
What ideal traffic patterns would help with that traffic alleviation? Well, that traffic issue right now, I should say.
I think that ultimately mass transit's going to have to help us, to reduce the number of cars that are actually on the road. I don't think you can build your way out of it. Given where we're at, given what it would take to build, at some point you can't build enough roads. You've got to change the mindset of the people to utilize mass transit. And in the South, that hasn't really been a way that we get around. Right. It's just not. So
yeah, that's exactly right.
So it's a cultural change. It'll take time.
Yep. And Councilman, let me ask you, when you talked earlier about obviously development, what areas in your district are really the city that are ideal for redevelopment and new development right now, I should say?
Well, we still got, development on Dorchester Road corridor. It's coming to an end, though. It's almost built out from a residential standpoint.
Yes.
The next area is going to be across the Ashland. That's where the development in my district is going to occur.
Wow. So, how many homes in the city have actually been built at a fairly consistent rate? It's obviously Westcott over the last 15 years, those homes have all been built and added. We've had a few apartment complexes that have been approved 20 years ago that have finally been built. But it's the mass developments really in the city. There's not a lot of space for that left. And I want to ask you this: is there a roadmap for equity in the city of North Charleston?
As far as we try to be as fair as we can to all the areas. Obviously, the newer developments, were forced to build sidewalks. When they built Westcott out, that was a requirement.
Sure.
50 years ago, when somebody built a neighborhood, that wasn't a requirement. So trying to close that gap, we've been working on that. So.
Where in your district that actually needs connectivity right now?
My district is pretty well connected. as far as, it really comes back to that Ashley Phosphate Dorchester Road corridor, both towards Somerville as well as back towards the city of Charleston. I mean, that's your thoroughfare. And just given the way that it's developed, other than widening those roads, there's really not additional roads that you could put in that would improve that connectivity.
What solutions do you have?
I mean, I would say that you really, as we continue to develop and redevelop,
Yes, sir.
is we really need to have that private-public partnership that, looks at, the infrastructure, looks at what they're doing, and how it's going to impact, the residents that are already there. We just passed in council an ordinance to where we have control of the traffic studies, to where we can do our own traffic studies. And that way it's not an unbalanced, look at the traffic. I think that's going to make a difference, being able to do our own and really, comparing that to what's provided to us. So that's going to make a difference.
And let me go back over here to Park Circle. How do you reimagine the interior of Park Circle for the next 50 years?
Well, I mean, really, the history of Park Circle is really fascinating. Going back to pre-World War II, so many of the residents, either played baseball there, or they went to a dance in the old building, or they used to have boxing matches in there. So it's been used for a lot of different things, and it was really a hub for the community.
Sure.
And I think the new building that they're building there, it's going to have the ability to have some outdoor concerts and stuff and different events there. I think it's really going to, continue to be a center for that area and for the city, and it'll be something that the residents will be proud of. So, to include, the all-inclusive playground they're putting in, which is going to be state-of-the-art, which is something that the city needs. So,
where else does the city need that as far as inclusiveness?
I think, a lot of it, the community center that they're going to build, at the old tank farm, is going to really, bring the community together. The new facility at Danny Jones, with the improved pool, with the new gym, it's going to be a real asset to the community. Another thing that we haven't mentioned is the basketball facility that's there, right there off of Remount. That is a state-of-the-art facility that's used, all the time. Whether it's open play for basketball, they play pickleball in there. They've got all kind of activities going on in there on a regular basis.
Wow.
So it's just adding those type of facilities throughout the city that's just adds a little bit more to the community.
And speaking of the community, Councilman, what areas in North Charleston can the city actually slow gentrification in?
That's a hard question to answer. And it's really an economic question. It comes down to economics and what people are willing to pay for that property and what they plan to put on that property. And I think it's important that as we continue to develop and redevelop, that you really have that public-private partnership that I was talking about, to ensure that you're not pricing people out of the areas that they've lived in forever. And that's what happens is it comes down to economics, and we've got to make sure that we don't price ourselves out of the market. So,
and what does that market look like right now for the city?
We've been fortunate that we've been able to grow and to expand, which is a good thing.
Yes, sir.
But it's a very fine line as to keeping it affordable for our residents. And because the area, not just North Charleston, but the entire Charleston region, is so popular. It makes it, when you said earlier you were looking to buy a house, and you're seeing firsthand just how expensive property's gotten, and trying to figure that out. I think it really comes down to that partnership to ensure that that we do leave some affordable housing there, some options there, and that's the only way that you're going to try to regulate it.
Any subsidized housing?
That's something that you could always look at. And again, it comes down to the developers. We can't force, a private business to build, what you would consider affordable versus, something that's, $1 million. So really trying to work that partnership is where it really comes down to.
What is it, Councilman? Is it attainable? Is it affordable? Or is it workforce housing?
It's three different terms for basically really the same. You're really talking about the same thing, and defining it is really where it gets difficult. What exactly does that mean?
Yes,
Is it looking at the average income and saying, well, okay, this is what's affordable, or this is what's workforce. I mean, it's really. It's like I say, it's really the same thing with just different terms that people have come up with, but it's something that people can afford, regardless of what you call it. It's what can the average worker afford, and if you price them out of the market, then you're going down a slippery slope.
So, what are the average income levels in the city right now?
They have definitely increased over the last, 15, 20 years. And again, that's you can look at that question a lot of different ways and analyze it a lot of different ways. But it's something that the city definitely needs to look at to ensure that we are providing attainable housing, affordable housing, whatever, workforce housing, whatever you want to call it. And that's something we could probably do a better job of really studying and looking at. So,
and where exactly could affordable housing or attainable housing or workforce housing be in the city right now?
I think it's got to be across the city. I think it's got to be citywide. And I think that whether you set a percentage or how you come up with that number, people are a lot smarter than me that can figure out what that number is. But it's got to be throughout the city. You can't just look at it, whether it be in my district or Michael Brown 10's. It's got to be uniformly a uniform approach across the entire city. Because otherwise, as it continues to develop, you're going to have the same issues even in the newer parts that you have in the older parts if we don't put something in place now to help with that.
So what are the problems in the newer parts of the city?
Well, again, it really comes down to being able to move around and the transit, and that's where it bottlenecks. From 10 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, it's not really a problem. Yeah. But from 6:30 to 8 o'clock and from 4:30 to 6 o'clock, it's a problem. So, that's the biggest issue, on that end of the city is really just the traffic.
And going back, obviously, to Park Circle, because I want to go around the corner to where the pedestrian bridge is, and obviously next to the Riverfront Park.
Right.
I know that the city has a private investment of the powerhouse and the storehouse front road.
Right.
So what is that investment right now?
Well, we just put out a request for pricing to, develop, I think it's 70 acres over there of mixed use, which would be, some residential, some businesses, but that's an area that, if you go back to the Navy base closing, we've continued to make strides and to improve that area, and it's an area of growth that over the next 15, 20 years you're going to see it, build out, and you're going to have a lot of nice areas over there, a lot of nice places to live, and with the pedestrian bridge, it opens up more parking to where you can have bigger events at Riverfront Park, which is actually, it's a beautiful, beautiful park, beautiful area, and I think that the more it develops, the more that people will go there, and there'll be different things for them to come and see.
Speaking of the pedestrian bridge, I'm almost saying mayor. I'm sorry. Councilman, let me ask you, is the city of North Charleston adding the ambience before the real project when it comes to this pedestrian bridge?
Well, I mean, the pedestrian bridge needed to be built in order to connect it to, the other side with the parking. I guess you could argue, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, but at the end of the day, you're gonna have to put something there. So, it's definitely a positive addition to the area over there.
So how much is this bridge actually costing the average taxpayer in the city?
I don't know how it would break down to the individual taxpayer. But it's definitely going to be a value added piece of the city and piece of that park. So
wow. Now, what else do you want to add to the park?
Well, I mean, it's just going to continue to add mixed use type development in that area, which would be restaurants and shops and just the the natural beauty that's there. Being on the water, really gives North Charleston back some of its waterfront property. It's not industrialized, which the industry is important, but so is the ability for the citizens to enjoy it as well. So,
is that the new downtown North Charleston?
We really don't have a specific downtown. I think you've got different pockets of what you may consider downtown, whether it be the the redevelopment of Reynolds Avenue, whether it be the old Navy base, whether it be the Park Circle Montague area, which over the last 20 years has completely transformed from where it was to the businesses and the restaurants and the different things that you have in Park Circle now. And I think you'll continue to see that type of development occurring.
And speaking of the future, let me talk to you about this, Councilman. Are you, because I heard the rumors, are you running for mayor of North Charleston?
I think it really comes down to what our current mayor, Keith Summey, does. Whether he, runs for one more term or whether he says, I've had enough and calls it quits. And I think, until that decision is completely formed, I wouldn't say that I'm not running for mayor. I wouldn't say that I am running for mayor. I think it really comes down to, what our current mayor does. And I think he deserves, that time and that respect to decide what he wants to do. And then at that time, we'll see where we are and what happens after that. So,
have you already made your decision?
I would say no. I haven't really made a decision one way or the other. It's obviously something I've thought about. But we'll see what happens over the next few months, and who does what. So,
North Charleston City Councilman and Mayor Pro-Tem Ken Skipper.
Yes,
thank you so much for your time. And again,
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. It's been a couple years, and it's always good to see you and enjoy the conversation. And hopefully I answered the questions pretty well. And I will say that North Charleston's really in a great place, and we have plenty of opportunity for everyone as we go forward. Is it perfect? No, but it's a pretty good place.
That's great. Great to hear. And hope to have you back on Quintin.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.